Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential Podcast, brought to you by Corewell Health. I am Andrew Kahn.
I'm Ryan Zook.
And I'm Aaron McMahon.
The Michigan football team won its third straight with a narrow victory over visiting Purdue. What did we think of the performance, and how will the Wolverines handle the bye week? Plus, the basketball season is about to tip off. All that and more coming up on Wolverine Confidential. Okay, Aaron and Ryan, good to be with you two here on Monday morning, November 3rd, the day the college basketball season will begin. In fact, it already did. There was a 8 a.m. tip-off this morning that game's going down to the wire. Winthrop and Queens University. But yeah, the Michigan men take the floor tonight, 8:35 against Oakland. But before we preview, let's recap, and that means talking Michigan football. They won 21-16 over Purdue on Saturday night at the Big House. Purdue, as we mentioned on this podcast and elsewhere, had not won a Big Ten game since 2023. Michigan was a 3-touchdown favorite in this one. So I want to start with how you two felt Sharon Moore and the Michigan players felt after this game. Like, I was at the Purdue post-game press conference, and while I did watch Michigan's after the fact, like, you guys were there. Tell me and our listeners what the reaction was. Was it a win's a win, or we better get better to achieve our goals?
Probably a combination of both. You definitely got the vibe that, they were fortunate to come out of there with a win, given, the injuries that had piled up and some of the struggles they had on Saturday at risk, especially offensively. I think they felt fortunate a little bit to get out of there with the victory. By the same token, too, there were, like, Jordan Marshall was adamant. He's like, we need to get better. We had a lot of sloppy play. He's like, myself included, despite his 185-yard, 3-touchdown games. I have to get better in pass protection. There's maybe less of that from Bryce Underwood, but he did acknowledge, look, mistakes were made. A lot of mistakes were made. They got some cleaning up to do. Now, fortunately for them, they have a bye week coming up here, so they're going to have some time to maybe hone in on some of this stuff. But it's been a reoccurring issue, right? Depending on the opponent, and it's varied week to week. But Saturday night, there were a lot of issues, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was apologizing for winning the game and improving to 7-2 and kind of keeping their season alive. But I think you could tell Sharon was frustrated about a few things, and especially special teams. It's becoming a theme here all season. They're just not getting any production from there, and you could tell he was a little bit frustrated. Bryce Underwood's doesn't seem to be bothered at all by having two lackluster passing performances in a row. Zach Marshall, confident that he still thinks they're the best passing offense, going to be the best passing offense in the country, which is a little extreme in my opinion. But they're still they believe they're going to turn this thing around and get things going through the air here at some point this season. Running out of runway to do that, but again, they're winning games, and winning games they should. Like they were favored by 3 touchdowns on Saturday. They're probably going to be favored against Maryland and Northwestern too, who aren't two of the better teams in the conference. So yeah, it wasn't a pretty performance overall from the Wolverines.
Yeah, Michigan 107th in the country in passing yards per game. Bryce Underwood's passer rating, is, I think, not the 11th, I think, in the Big Ten among quarterbacks. So yeah, not that's not a bold opinion by you, Ryan. I think many people share it. But yeah, let's mention what you guys both hit on, the injuries in this game. No Justice Haynes, linebackers Jimmy Rolder and Cole Sullivan did not play either. Jayshawn Barham left after 1 or 2 plays in this game. So, like, my general assessment is that the defense was still solid and showed its depth. The offense sort of one-dimensional. I think those are fair takeaways. But let's kind of dive in more specifically to kind of what you guys thought about Michigan's performance.
Yeah, I guess we should probably start with Underwood, because I think he was probably the biggest disappointment of the game. It was, I think, by far his worst performance of the season. Not only from a stat line perspective, 13-22 for 145 yards interception, but he had a couple of key, turnovers there in the red zone. He missed several of his receivers, especially early. So it was off. You can tell the passing attack was not in sync. And look, this isn't the first time we've seen situations like this. He airmailed a couple of receivers. He missed on a couple of receivers. There were a couple of situations where maybe you can make the case the receiver should have made the catch, like Dalvin McCulley there in the end zone. Just a really wacky passing game from them. It didn't seem like anyone was really in sync with anyone. And look, I'll be complimentary to Underwood. There were some moments there where again he flashed 5-star high level potential, right? Zipping some balls in tight windows. The arm is clear, the strength is clearly there, but it just. I don't know. They clearly had issues moving the ball through the air, and thankfully for Jordan Marshall, the run game was there because otherwise Michigan really had trouble moving the ball through the air consistently, reliably all game.
I will say for Underwood, as poorly as he was throwing on Saturday, he did have some nice runs. I mean, he did fumble out of the end zone, which was extremely costly, but he did have some nice runs in the game too. But yeah, like Aaron said, the passing game was completely out of sync. Whether it's just bad throws or guys not hauling in passes. I mean, Pro Football Focus has Michigan for 3 drops on Saturday. Samaj has another one. I think there was the one over the middle where he did it was zipped in there really hard, and he did have to jump up to get it, but he did get both hands on it and was absolutely leveled to not come down with a catch. Jamar Browder also had one. I think that was one that he had it. It looked like he had it corralled and had it kind of punched out at the end and didn't finish the catch. And like Aaron said, Donovan McCulley had one too. So just not clean operation really with anyone. The pass blocking wasn't very good either. So it's just the whole operation was a mess. But yeah, fortunately for Michigan, Jordan Marshall had another career game to keep the offense going and keep the season afloat.
Yeah, I often talk to the opposing coaches after the game, and most all of them have said, oh man, Bryce Underwood, this guy is really good for a freshman. They do, add that qualifier, and they say, how great he's going to be, and you can already see. And they're not saying, they're not trashing him in the present at all. They're saying, oh, he's playing winning football for the most part, is what most of them have said, because until Saturday he'd done a pretty good job protecting the ball, and some of just his ball handling skills, play fakes, things like that. Even if the cumulative stats weren't there, you could see he was doing some of the little things that a quarterback should do. But then you got the 2 turnovers on Saturday. That kind of complicates things.
Both in the red zone too. Yeah, not what you want.
And that had been what Sharon Moore had been complimentary about Bryce all season long, despite some of the issues, decision making in games and maybe just lackluster play. He would always say, like, he's taking care of the football. He's not really turning it over. And that was certainly the case up until Saturday. And not only did he turn the ball over, but again, as we pointed out, both of those came in the red zone. You're leaving points off the board. And as Sharon pointed out after the game, I mean, the final score could have been a little bit more lopsided had they scored in both of those situations. You left anywhere from 6 to 14 points off the board. So it's one thing to turn the ball over, but it's another to turn the ball over when you're going in and about to score points.
To go on to that interception again real quick too, it's just it wasn't a smart throw at all. He had Donovan McCulley wide open in the end zone, and I mean, even if you don't trust your arm or just want it, like he probably wouldn't have gotten the first down, but if he beats a defender, maybe he gets close and they go for it on like 4th and 1, 4th and 2 too. But you can't just throw across your body like that, and that was a disaster as soon as he kind of wound up to throw across his body. There was a Purdue defender right there, and that was a pretty easy interception for him stepping in front of, I forget what receiver it was, but it was, just you can't have that.
He has had success with that throw, though, a few times this year. You wonder if he, was just, that developed some bad habits there, maybe because he was able to complete a few of those earlier this year. But
I think it also speaks to again, we talked about him being a freshman. It just speaks to the inexperience. If you just, take a second and scan the field, as you pointed out, Donovan McCulley was wide open in the corner of the end zone, really no one around him. So if he, that would have been an easy score. So obviously we don't know what Bryce was thinking in that play, but my guess is he locked in and he was determined to make a play there. And as you said, he's made that play before, so it's not out of the ordinary for him to do it. He's got the arm strength and the accuracy to do so. He got a little greedy there, and it cost him clearly.
All right, but let's talk about the guy that you did say carried this offense, and that was Jordan Marshall. 25 carries, 185 yards. That's 7.4 a pop. All 3 of Michigan's touchdowns, including a 54-yard run to open things up. So, yeah, leading into the season, what did we hear Sharon Moore and the Michigan coaches talk about? What did we, say on this podcast? That it was 1A and 1B, or 1 and 1A, whatever they wanted to call it. They felt they had two, Big Ten caliber starting elite running backs. Then the game started, and it was the Justice Haynes show, and Marshall would come in and he'd do okay in his moments, but didn't get bulk carries, and wasn't hitting those long runs like Haynes was. But now with Haynes out of the picture, sidelined at times, or in this past Saturday, the entire game over the last few weeks, man, Marshall has looked the part of a featured Big Ten back.
He sure has. I mean, he's like a true bell cow guy. He reminds me a lot of like Blake Corum to him. He doesn't go down. He fights for every yard he can get. I mean, I think there was that third touchdown, rushing touchdown, where he gets bottled up in the line there, and I think a defender actually had his leg, and somehow he gets out of it and squirts out of it and scores. So another impressive performance from him. I mean, that's 3 straight 100-yard rushing games for him. Career high 158. He clearly carried the offense on Saturday, and they needed him, right? Like we talked about the issues through the air. Justice Haynes was not available, didn't play at all. So it was pretty much his show. 25 carries, he made the most of it. Not only that, but he had that 25-yard catch as well that set up the first touchdown. So a big game for him, and he's going to be the guy they're going to have to lean on here the next couple of games.
I still didn't see an angle that showed how he emerged from that scrum to score that touchdown, by the way.
He said in the post game afterwards that I think Greg Crippen, shoved him. He didn't know how he got out of it either. He said he was bottled up, and next thing you know, I think Cripp shoved him from behind, and somehow he got out of it. I watched the game this morning, and it looked like, as I said, a Purdue defender had his leg wrapped up. So somehow he got out of it, and I don't know. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was truly incredible. And also his 54-yard touchdown run, too. I think it seems like, I don't know about you guys, but he's gotten faster throughout the year, too. Because, like, when Justice Haynes and him were the 1-2 punch, it's like, all right, yeah, Justice is the lightning guy and can hit in the home run hitter. And then, Jordan Marshall will come in and be the bruiser. But, man, on that 54-yard touchdown run, it was like he was shot out of a cannon. And, I mean, just blew by the whole Purdue defense. So he's got the whole complement of things working right now. But yeah, like he said, he needs to be better at pass protection too, because I think he was docked for like 3 pressures allowed in the game, received like an 11 grade on pass blocking. And but yeah, I mean, him running the ball has been and has been really impressive the last 3 games.
Life is beautiful and fragile. We fall. We get tired. And sometimes we get sick. But with Corewell Health, we are also strong. We fight disease. We battle cancer. We come together. We come back. We push forward. When the body breaks, we break through. Corewell Health. We can.
You guys did mention special teams being a problem. What areas in particular are you looking at? I mean, the punt return seems to be a problem for sure. Maybe that's at the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, there was a shanked punt. Andrew Marsh fumbled a kickoff return. I mean, it was everything. I mean, the only thing they didn't have anything go wrong was Dominic Zavada kicking the extra points or the field goals. So they got some work to do. I don't know if it's the lights at night. I don't know if it's just the inexperience. It just, I don't know. It seems like almost every facet of that group is just not working. So we'll see where things go and where the offseason leads. But they've got some clear improvement to make there in the special teams.
And Sharon keeps hinting at potential changes, but it's been the same guys the whole year. I mean, Hudson Hollenbeck has been the punter the whole year. Samaj Morgan has primarily been the punt returner. Andrew Marsh from game 1 has been the primary kick returner, and nothing's changed. So at some point, it's like, you know what, got to send a message and just, put someone else back there just to maybe jumpstart some guys. But I mean, it's has not been a smooth operation at all. And games like Purdue, yeah, maybe it's not going to cost you, but with the game coming up in later this month, you're going to need to play a pretty perfect game, and that includes special teams. And right now we've seen nothing close to perfect.
Yeah, special teams is one of those things where, like, it kind of goes unnoticed for a while, especially when you're good at it. Like there were so many years we talked about Michigan having a really good special teams unit because it either would help them win games or it wouldn't cost them games. I'm not going to say it's actually cost them a game yet this year, but it's gotten close a couple of times, and you don't want to be in that situation where you lose field position, you fumble or make a key turnover because of a drop punt return or kickoff return. So I don't know. It almost seems like almost every punt return now they're either not gaining much yardage or losing yardage. I mean, there was one punt return there on Saturday with Samaj where he caught it and I think he went back 4 or 5 yards and just cost him further yard. I don't know. It's blunder after blunder, and you just wonder how much they're repping and what's going on in practice because it's just not getting any better.
I will say a special teams blunder by Purdue, I think helped, kind of swing this game. May have been the biggest kind of moment of the game, arguably after Underwood's interception. Michigan forces a 3 and out. They use one timeout during that sequence, and Purdue has to punt from its own 11, and it was shanked out of bounds, went out of bounds at the Purdue 32. And Michigan able to take advantage and score a touchdown there, shortly before half to take a lead into halftime. So that was important.
It was. I will point out it wasn't really anything Michigan did. It was a clear shank. I'm rewatching the game this morning. There was not a Michigan special teams person anywhere near. So it was just a clear shank. So yeah, you're right. That was a vital part of the game and certainly helped Michigan, get some points there before half.
Let's talk about the kind of the injury situation then. We talked about it earlier. We mentioned some of the names who did not play. Justice Haynes in a boot and a scooter on the sideline. And Aaron, I know you wrote about it. Seems like he had surgery on his foot. Like, what do we think? What do we know about him? Any of the linebackers, Rod Moore, anyone else who didn't play or got banged up in this game?
Michigan's a banged up team at this point. I don't think a bye week could have come at a better time at this rate, given the volume of injuries they have going on here. Sharon didn't rule out getting Justice back by the end of the year. He didn't really answer the question really after the game period, but he didn't say that. He didn't necessarily come out and say we're not going to have him for the rest of the year. And I think there's internal optimism that he could return at some point. They haven't specified what the injury is. It's either a foot or an ankle. Something's going on there. He's unable to walk on it. So we'll see where he's at. I'd be surprised if he's back in time for the Ohio State game. I guess it's possible. I don't know how severe it is, but this is kind of giving me Blake Corum vibes from a couple of years ago when he got injured and was hoping to come back for the Ohio State game. He did. And he played a couple of plays and couldn't go the rest of the way. So it's going to be the Jordan Marshall show the rest of the year, or at least certainly these next few games at running back. They're going to have to lean on him. Bryson Kudsdorf, I had some really good carries on Saturday. Obviously, they gave Jasper Parker some carries as well, so those two are going to have to help pick up the slack there. Elsewhere, they're banged up at linebacker. And you mentioned Jimmy Rolder didn't play as we talked about last week. Cole Sullivan wasn't available again. Jayshon Barron came out of the game there in the first drive. I don't know what his status is. And then they lose, and Rod Moore didn't play again. I think he'll probably come back here soon. Probably after the bye week. That would be 3 straight games in a bye week to get him healthy. And then Donovan McCulley came out of the game late as well with an injury. I don't know what his status is either, how serious that was, but they're banged up all across the board. I mean, look, that's not uncommon for college football. It's that time of the year, right? Michigan's 9 games in. Weather's starting to change. They play a lot of football. It happens. But if Michigan wants to go on a run here and try and get in the playoff and run the table here, they're going to need to be as full strength as possible. And right now they're clearly not that.
Yeah, I mean, Marlon Klein didn't finish the game either. Just a long laundry list of injuries, and it's I mean, at least I thought like the linebackers played pretty well for how thin things were there. But you want to be close, at least close to full strength heading into that final game of the year. And right now we don't have many updates, but it's a banged up bunch.
Well, let's look ahead to that final game against Ohio State. As we mentioned, Michigan on a bye this week. Then they play Northwestern at Wrigley Field. Then they're at Maryland the week after that. And then it's going to be against an Ohio State team that I can confidently say will be 11-0 and number 1 in the country when that game happens. Those Northwestern and Maryland games, we said they weren't gimmies as recently as a few weeks ago. I think we're probably all thinking that we're feeling better about those games, even given Michigan's injury situation, factoring in how Northwestern and Maryland have looked the last few weeks, Maryland has lost now 4 in a row. Northwestern, they're coming off that. They were on bye this week. They'll go to USC next week, but they're 5-3 overall, 3-2 in the Big Ten. Like have you seen enough from Michigan to think that they can beat this Ohio State team for the 5th straight time, or not yet?
This is a tough question to answer because I picked Michigan to lose the last couple of years, and yet they somehow always find a way to pull it out. This Michigan offense was a lot worse last year, and they still were able to win. So I think Bryce Underwood will certainly be a huge variable in that game, not only with his arm but his legs too, right, to help pick up the slack there and keep Ohio State's defense honest. Because I'll be quite frank, from what I've seen so far in college football, Ohio State probably is the best defense in the country. They're playing very well. They're not giving up a ton of points or yards. They're a very good unit. So Michigan certainly can be up for the task there. Offensively, you like to have a Justice Haynes available, especially a full strength Justice Haynes. That's probably not a reality right now. So I feel less optimistic than I might have been a few weeks ago with a healthy Justice Haynes. But again, this is in Ann Arbor. Never say never. Michigan's had Ohio State's number the last few years. And look, assuming they do win these next 2 games, like, there will be a lot to play for, right? Like, Michigan needs to win that game to get in the playoff, and certainly they'll be prepared and motivated. I don't know, man. I think this Ohio State team is as good as they've been. I think they're more equipped and better like positioned to beat a Michigan team than maybe in years past. But again, I go back to my original statement: like, Michigan's had their number. So it's hard to pick against them at this point. But certainly, if you're a Michigan fan, you can't be feeling great, given the number and nature of injuries that are piling up.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State looks incredible, and they just continue to ascend too. It's like they're getting better every week. Julian Sayin is a Heisman candidate right now, and I think if Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, it's going to mostly be the Buckeyes shooting themselves in the foot and making mistakes that kind of hand the game to Michigan, because talent wise, it's Ohio State has a huge advantage right now. If you're Michigan, you're going to need some breaks to go your way, and just hope that Ohio State plays so tense that like they make some mistakes and you're able to capitalize. And it'll be fascinating with like Julian Sayin making his first start in the rivalry, Bryce Underwood making his first start in the rivalry, with potentially a lot on the line, especially for the Wolverines if they're fighting for a berth in the playoff and potentially the Big Ten title game.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still some questions about Ohio State, maybe in the trenches and how good they are as a, their running game, their rush defense. I think the biggest thing for Michigan though right now is that they've won 4 straight. Like, if that hadn't happened, I think you'd be feeling a lot differently about that game. But because they have, you can't rule anything out. And again, this bye coming at a perfect time for them to try to get healthy and give a little more hope in the 2 games before they play Ohio State. We'll have full coverage of any news coming out of this bye week and anything Michigan football related on MLive.com/Wolverines. As we mentioned earlier, college basketball season tips off tonight in Ann Arbor. That will mean an 8:35 tip against Oakland. You can watch it on FS1 if you're not there. Michigan is number 7 in the country, as we've mentioned. They've won 22 straight season openers, and they're big favorites in this one. But Oakland, they were picked 2nd in the Horizon League. They've got the preseason conference player of the year, and they've got Greg Campy on the sideline, the longest tenured active coach in Division I. He enters his 42nd season on the job. A little trivia that I don't think's too hard here. Who's next on that list? Who is the 2nd longest active tenured coach in Division I college basketball?
I have no idea. No, there's not even a name popping into my head.
Tom Izzo.
Oh,
Tom
geez,
Izzo
yeah,
is the
wow.
correct answer, but pretty significant, almost 10 years behind. I think maybe even more behind Campy.
Who's third?
Sure, yeah, who's third? I'll give you. Anybody want to take a crack? Keep going down this thing, Aaron. You're hot. One of them's a big name out west. Mid-major, I put in quotes.
Oh, the Gonzaga coach?
But not really. Yes, Gonzaga coach Mark Few. He's tied with James Jones at Yale for next on the list. But yeah, that's Greg Cappy, the zone defense will present some. Michigan will have to run some different stuff offensively, but again, a lot of hype. They're going to raise that banner for last year's Big Ten tournament championship before the game. And yeah, as I've said, as I've written, they've got a team capable of trying to go out and win some more. So a lot of excitement for the Michigan men's basketball team. The women open tomorrow night at Chrysler. They're number 13 in the country. Canisius at 7 p.m. at Chrysler. That's on Big Ten Plus is where you can watch that if you're not there.
For the men's side, what are you looking for? Because they gave up a lot of points in the exhibition. They clearly weren't playing full strength. They had turnover issues last year. This is a different roster. Like, what are you paying attention to in the opener?
Yeah, if you want to see those areas cleaned up, so not 20 turnovers and better better rebounding kind of on both sides given their size. Again, this is going to be for any team like it's a work in progress college basketball. I mean, it's a long season. You want to be playing your best in March. So there's never really a reason to panic based on what you see at this time of year. But yeah, they're going to play some high level games, early in the season here in November. So it would behoove them to, kind of find some cohesiveness earlier rather than later. And this Oakland game's their first real chance to do that. Yaxel Lendeborg, 2 great performances in the exhibition games. Now it counts, and we'll see what he can do with a fully healthy roster that they hadn't had for a few weeks leading up to the exhibitions. Had everyone back for that final exhibition, but now another couple weeks of practice under their belt. So yeah, kind of a cleaner game than we saw in either of the exhibitions would be the number one thing to look for. We'll have full coverage of that game on MLive.com/Wolverines. Thank you for listening.